Hi everyone, welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. If you like what we do, there is an easy way to support us. Please let us a 5-star rating in the app where you are listening to this podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. It really helps to direct more people to the Highlights from Ukraine. My name is Artem, and here is the news. For 227 days, Ukraine stands strong against the forces of the Russian invasion. The explosion on the illegally constructed bridge across the Kerch Strait between occupied Crimea and Russia was a special operation conducted by the Security Service of Ukraine, reports Interfax Ukraine, based on the sources among the law enforcement officials. The New York Times source among Ukrainian officials confirmed that the attack on the bridge was organized by the Ukrainian Special Services and a bomb was planted in a truck that was driving over the bridge, reports Ukrposhta. According to the New York Times, it is not clear whether the driver of the truck, who apparently died in the explosion, knew that there were explosives inside. The media points out that the Russian troops were unable to defend the bridge despite its central role in Russian military operations, its personal significance for Putin, and its symbolism as a literal link between Russia and its occupied Crimea. As the New York Times writes, any serious obstruction of traffic on the bridge could have a major impact on Russia's ability to wage war in southern Ukraine, where Ukrainian forces are conducting an increasingly effective counteroffensive. Without it, the Russian military will be very limited in its ability to deliver fuel, equipment, and ammunition to units fighting in the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. Previously, the occupying authorities of Crimea announced that the truck exploded on the Crimean bridge. The investigative committee of the Russian Federation reported 3 deaths. By the evening October 8th, the occupiers announced the resumption of traffic across the Crimean bridge for cars and buses, as well as railways. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky hasn't commented directly on the explosion on the bridge in Crimea, but in his evening video address he said that yesterday was a good and mostly sunny day on the territory of Ukraine. The exception was Crimea, where it was cloudy. Probably he was hinting at the clouds of smoke over the bridge. Zelensky stressed that Ukraine's future is sunny and without occupiers, in particular in Crimea. Quote, "If the occupiers flee while they have a chance, this will be the best option for them. If they are forced to stay, any occupier can find a way to surrender to Ukrainian captivity. We will not leave any other options for the occupiers to rely on." Unquote. Yesterday, Ukrainians were celebrating the attack on the Kerch Bridge, which for many represents the occupation of the part of Ukraine that lasts since 2014. For majority, the attack was a sign that Ukraine will return these lands illegally taken from it. Ukraine National Post Service Ukrposhta announced plans to issue a new stamp dedicated to the burning Crimean bridge, reports Radio Liberty. The release date will be the first half of November. At least 17 people were killed in a massive Russian missile attack on Zaporizhia, reports Ukrposhta. Yesterday, missiles hit apartment buildings and streets of the private sector of the city. 5 private houses were destroyed and about 40 damaged. Rescuers, joined by volunteers, are clearing the debris. The General Staff of Ukraine informs that almost 40 combat clashes took place yesterday, reports Union. The most tense situation was in the Bakhmut and Avdiivka directions, where Ukrainian forces repelled more than 30 Russian attacks. Moscow appointed a new commander of its forces in Ukraine, reports Interfax Ukraine. Russian Aerospace Forces commander Sergei Surovikin has been appointed commander of the joint group of forces in the war against Ukraine. On June 24th, it became known that Surovikin commanded the southern group of Russian forces in Ukraine. Previously, he commanded the Russian forces group in Syria, participated in the Second Chechen campaign, and in the conflict on the territory of Tajikistan. Germany announced new supplies of weapons to Ukraine. In addition to the previously announced Iris-T air defense system, Berlin promises 100 tanks, reports Liga. German Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht clarified that those tanks are not German-made but will be delivered from Greece and Slovakia. The International Monetary Fund approved a new tranche of $1.3 billion to Ukraine under the Rapid Financing Instrument, reports Interfax Ukraine. According to the IMF, these funds will help Ukraine meet urgent balance of payment needs. At the same time, the IMF believes that it will play a catalytic role for further financial support from Ukraine's creditors and donors. The IMF stresses that Ukrainian authorities deserve considerable credit for having maintained an important degree of macrofinancial stability in these extreme challenging circumstances. We would really appreciate if you could support us on our Patreon. Even $5 a month will help us to continue our work and present to you the latest news from Ukraine. As a token of our gratitude for your support, you will get access to a series of exclusive episodes on wartime life in Ukraine. From this series, you will learn how ordinary Ukrainians live in times of invasion, what they eat, how they travel, celebrate, what music they listen to, and much more. To subscribe to our Patreon, follow the link in the description to this episode. Thank you. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.